And unlike, say, Chinatown in San Francisco or something, that is a place where it's both an ethnic area and a tourist attraction in the larger, metropolitan area. But most of the places you have, like in a city, say this size, would just be, well, this is where the poor people live, or this is where the black people live, or this is where the white people live. There are things like that, but they're not set up for you to visit them. They're like that because that's how the people are.
And if you want to even visit those, you don't have to travel.
Right.
Most of the time, even in Chicago, you have access to all those ethnical groups and religious groups, and yeah.
Well, that's interesting. It's interesting to see. Have you had any experiences in terms of being? You've mentioned how you've reacted to the space yourself. How have other people reacted to you in those spaces? Any differences?
To be honest, I haven't had any I haven't had any particular experience of myself being treated differently or special because of not being American or even being Iranian or I don't know, maybe it's just because I don't look that different from usually pass as just somebody who's from here. But I've had friends who have had experiences and I wouldn't again say necessarily negative experiences really.
Yeah. So where are you from is probably
as
soon as you start talking, they go, "Oh, you speak differently. Where are you from?"
Yeah, actually, a few times I've had people who basically we've had a conversation where I'm from Iran, and usually the few times were the people who traveled to Iran, either before Iran's revolution or some of them in after. And most of the time it's very positive because they were like, wow, I visited Shiraz and I went to Tabriz and I had that special bread, and so it's usually positive experience or a story, or a friend they had, a college friend that was Iranian, or a family member who was from Iran, and but I can also understand maybe my experience as an immigrant in the United States is not similar to, actually is very different from the experience of a lot of other immigrants who come here in different social status, or as undocumented immigrants or refugees. I'm usually around people who are in school or very educated. I'm usually in the cities that are very have a big diversity or a big body of international students or professionals. So that's probably one of the reasons that I haven't had any sort of I would say on normal experience, but my experience of US is that people are very accepting of the people who are different from them. But again, it is my experience because of the places and people I've dealt with. So I can't generalize that. Or
well, certainly you watch the news enough to know that there's a significant number of people in this country who are not at all welcoming or accepting of difference, and they're pretty loud about it at times. So it's something that we're dealing with. We have the sheer number of people that have contacted us since the election who are genuinely afraid. Literally, I'm afraid, I don't know what to do next, is surprising. I talk to somebody every day, at least, and there's a lot of that, and I would think even if your own personal experience wasn't a negative one, there certainly you must be at least concerned, or at least
definitely
watching the news going, what does this mean?
No, definitely. I was going to tell you, actually, we were just chatting about it before. So I've had since the election and basically the now everything is known and sort of like people are expanding what's going to happen next. I've had a lot of people, like students or even professors, who are not American, or like maybe they're American but like originally from somewhere else,
Right, right.
who have started talking about like just the fact that people who come to this country as immigrants, they don't have as much ties as somebody who's born here.
Yeah.
They come here like most of the times with the goal that they want to do their best to thrive here and basically like do what is best for their interest.
Right.
And if the situation isn't very friendly for them, they would reconsider their decision. You know, the same way that they left their family and they came here, the same way they can just leave US and go to a different country.
That's true.
And one thing I just like generally hear, I think like there's different aspects to immigration, but the aspect that mostly is talked about in US and in the media and the press is that they usually talk of immigration as an act of charity to the immigrants. Like, what it is not true. Like a lot of the times, like true, some of the immigrants who come to United States, they come here at the beginning, they need help.
Yeah.
But if you look at the numbers, like how they thrive later on, like what percentage of them actually go above like U.S. average income in the future, it's actually very high, those numbers, much higher than the average of the country. And second of all, there's a big body of immigrants who come to this country as like people like me who come like to study in like get PhD, get master's degree, get postdocs, and honestly, these people are like they bring opportunities with themselves.
Yeah,
yeah. They help to create jobs here. They help U.S. economy to thrive, and basically, and the reason they're coming here at the first place, obviously, like there's infrastructure here, there's the freedom that's here, there is the opportunities here. But the moment that those things are gone, I don't see why people would keep coming here.
Yeah.
So but that is the tone that you most of the time hear in the media, that when they talk about immigration, it just is deemed as an act of charity, versus like a lot of the times actually the benefit that are the way that people in US benefit from the immigrants is actually much bigger than those people gain from coming to you.
Yeah, yeah. And that is a point, though, I can't count how many times I've made that. That goes all the way down the social ladder to the people that are generally thought of as coming here sort of as a charity thing. Those people are not just coming here going, okay, I'm going to sit down and beg on the streets. They come here to work. And I have spoken to so many of them. They work like 10, 15 hours a day.
Exactly.
I mean, they work very, very hard. They are very productive people. So they are here helping the economy as well. The problem is that immigration is an easy target, a political tool to use in times when times are hard. Because instead of me saying, well, you're suffering right now because I'm not paying you enough, because I've given your job to somebody else or whatever. If I say, well, you're suffering because those people over there are taking all your stuff, then you're not mad at me, you're mad at them. And that's how it has been used. And aside from, the disruption and the pain of people that is coming ahead, what I fear the most is legislation by ignorance or by stereotype that's coming up, because we seem to have this administration that's coming in that doesn't really care about facts very much. They care about perception. They care about feeling. They care about how things look to them or how things feel to them. And so they base their decision making on that, not on what's actually going on. And other people are saying what you just said. There are people here, they're bringing in money. If you go to the U of I campus and you walk around and you see who's paying all these high tuitions, renting all these upscale apartments, they're from other countries.
Yes.
More often than they are from here in the U.S. If you scare them, if they all go, oh, well, you don't like immigrants? Fine, I'll go somewhere else. We're really going to be hurting in a big way. And we will be driving off people. I mean, you don't just pick up and leave your country and go somewhere else as a casual thing. Nobody does that. It's like, I'm kind of bored today. I think I'm going to take everything I own and travel thousands of miles to where I don't know anybody and I don't speak a language. I got nothing better to do. I'm going to go do that. Nobody does that. It's always like the people who are like, I'm going to make something happen. I'm going to do something. I've really got drive. I've got energy. I really need to make a change. So I'm going to overcome the obstacles, whatever they are, and make this thing happen. Those are the people that are coming here.
Yeah.
And you want people like that. You want to attract people like that. And I mean, sorry, don't get me started. It's infuriating.
This is actually very true. I mean, I can just give you an example again. I'm from Iran. I went to University of Tehran, right?
Right.
My class were 150. So in Iran, like in order to get into school, everybody, all the students do a national university exam.
Oh, right.
You get a ranking, and then based on your ranking, you pick and go to a school. And every year, there's around like maybe like 500,000 students who compete to just get into, for example, engineering and science majors.
Right.
And out of those, you can think of like the top schools, like my school, like in my major had only 150 students accepted. Out of those 150 students, around 120 of them are in US now. And I mean, in the first place, those people, they were very valuable assets to the country that they left from. So, like, I can guarantee, like, if there was if I were a leader of a country, or if I was a president of a country, I would pay to bring those people back and keep them in the country.
Yeah.
So, what I'm trying to say is that this story happens for, I mean, if you talk to a lot of just graduate students here in the engineering campus from China or from India, you're going to notice the same pattern.
Yeah.
And honestly, I mean, these things, these are like things that a lot of countries now, like for example, Canada. Now, I have friends who've been to Canada, and they basically, the government of Canada is trying very, very hard to attract these type of students and then keep them there.
Yeah.
With a ton of incentives, financial incentives, like, for example, giving them permanent residence or citizenship after like 2 or 3 years of being in the country, just to ease the process of them staying there, working there, creating businesses, creating companies, creating jobs. So, again, like, just thinking as if, like, you know, the country is a basically closed environment where, like, if we're here, we're just gonna keep as we are. I think that's very wrong. Like, it's like a liquid, you know, like it has to always flow, and you have, and there's competition in the world. Like, I mean,
there is.
So,
Australia also does what you were saying about Canada. They actually actively try to attract people to come there. And I've read of people who said, well, I was going to go to the United States, but I don't think so. I'm going to go here because they want me here. You know, they want me there. Yeah, no, you're right. I like that the metaphor about water and liquid moving from space to space. But see, that is the thing that's frightening people, I think. There are people who grew up here, who've always been here, who have this memory. I don't know how much of it's memory and how much of it's just a sort of idealized dream of a way things used to be. And they're trying to go back to that, what they imagined that was, when America imagined itself at the top of the world. You know, the Americans were the best and brightest. Americans were the people you're talking about. That was us. The people you're talking about were, you know, second class or third class or something. They didn't even compare. But our education system has been kind of going downhill, or at least our pre-college stuff, and other countries have been going up. So the people that are coming that you're talking about are generally more qualified and better educated than their peers, their age group peers or level peers here. And that's one reason why universities are, partly it's the money, but it's also like we want the best people here. So the best people are not coming from the U.S., they're coming from other places.
So I have also something about that. Usually, like the people who come to US, they do not create competition for Americans.
Yeah.
Because in the first place, they come when there is no American to fill that position.
Yeah.
Like, for example, I can give, again, like the example of engineering schools. In United States, the engineering schools get international students only if there wasn't any domestic students who wanted to apply and get into school.
Oh.
So that means that one of the problems, maybe like it goes back to like high school, that's why many of American students do not choose to do engineering in the first place. But that's a different story, right? That's a problem that can, if it's a problem, can be fixed, or the change of policies. But the people who come is not that there are already like a ton of engineers in US.
Yeah.
There are, but like they're not enough. So these new people who come, they just fill in the vacant spaces.
Right.
The same story goes about undocumented immigrants. The type of jobs that they do are the jobs that people, like a lot of people, would not want to do.
Right.
In fact, I don't have a good memory being an engineer, but I remember another article I read about an experimental policy in one of the southern states that they put heavy fines on all the companies or businesses that used undocumented immigrants. And then that year, I think they had a huge problem in actually harvesting a lot of their farms.
Yeah.
Because basically there was no undocumented immigrant who was going to work, and basically paying the actual minimum wage to the citizens to work on those jobs basically didn't financially make sense for the business owners. So they just ended up not harvesting their farms, and the next year they had to reverse the policy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And this is a lot of the times the case. Like
I want to say Georgia.
I'm not
I'm
sure.
thinking it was Georgia. I remember reading the same thing, and that's what I think it was.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty much the story, I think, in a lot of the places. And, like, sure, there might be some cases that, this is not the case. But I don't think that there's that many of them.
Well, where it's not the case generally, it's more has to do with what people are asking to do a particular job. So there are jobs, menial jobs, picking fruit, strawberries, stuff where you're leaning over all day long, like picking stuff off low to the ground, things like that Americans don't want to do. But there are a lot of jobs, like in construction, for example. In the last 10 years or so, construction workers are all overwhelmingly, from like Mexico, Central America, places like that. And the reason is not that they're better or worse or any different, or that these are jobs that Americans don't want. These are jobs that owners of these companies don't want to pay as much for. Mm-hmm. So if you've got a pool of applicants, and this group is expecting $15, $20 an hour, and this group is expecting $7 to $10 an hour, you're going to hire those guys, assuming that the skill level is roughly the same.
That's true.
And so there are a lot of industries like that where there really has been a displacement, but it's not somebody coming and taking your job, it's someone coming and competing for your job, utilizing the free market, saying, I will offer my service for less than you do, and it will be the same or better service than you're offering, and the business owners are going, well, I will work with you instead of those people. But those people who are displaced from that job are unhappy with that. And their simplistic idea in many cases is, well, if you just get rid of all those guys, then I'll get my job back, as if they're magically going to the owners are going to suddenly start paying $10, $15 an hour, or $15, $20 an hour, where they have been paying $7 to $10 an hour. That's not going to happen. If you booted out all those guys and gave these guys their job back, the owners are going to, they're going to do it for a lower wage, and they're not going to like it. And that's where a lot of the time you get into this jobs Americans won't do. Part of that comes from the fact that there are jobs that companies will not pay you enough to do. And you have a pool of workers who will do that for that wage, and a pool of workers who won't do that for that wage. And so, I mean, it's complicated, but it's it's never as simple as it seems when you start like trying to think of how to solve it. It's a difficult problem, you know.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it certainly has a lot of aspects, and it's not just like a one aspect problem. But I still feel like a lot of people who, when the way they think about immigration and immigrants, is usually biased from the second point of view that you mentioned, and ignoring entirely like the other aspect of that, another dimension of it that exists, which basically.
Yeah, that doesn't get out in the media very much. So that's part of the problem, is the media likes to simplify everything down to its most basic form and then talk about that. And in one sense, that's good in getting information out that people might not have, but it's also bad because if the conversation never rises from that simple level, then no one ever really understands it. It seems like by making information more accessible to more people, we lowered the level of the conversation to the point where people don't actually understand what they're talking about anymore. And I think that's a real problem in our media. Well, you were right to look at the clock. We are getting near the end of our hour. Is there anything that you were hoping to talk about that we haven't gotten to yet that you want to bring up so we can at least get that in there somehow?
I hadn't prepared anything in particular, but really, if you have any questions or any other.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I have billions of questions, but it's, there's some things that take longer to get into. I mean, you mentioned that your family is near Turkey, and I know there's a lot going on there right now. It's really difficult stuff, and that would be a whole show right there, like how to deal with what's going on there. The world is a complicated place. It seems. It really is.
Yeah.
There's so much going on in so many different places, and they all affect each other in some different ways.
My hometown, basically, the other day I was looking in the map, and basically my hometown from the regions of Iraq that are right now under the control of ISIS are like less than probably like 6 hours drive.
Ooh, that's disturbing.
Yeah, and like my family, like literally, like most people in Iran, haven't felt anything because of the relative safety that exists in Iran. But still, like when you just think about the possibility of such a thing happening, it's disturbing. It's really like actually, it's pretty bad. It's awful.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons that this election was important in the U.S. For me personally was this, because U.S. election is not just about the United States.
Right.
It's about the whole world. And the policies that the United States takes impacts people, I would want to say even in some ways more than people in U.S.
I think you're right.
Yeah. Because in U.S., like, sure, some things change, but there's still like a lot of other things, like in the country, that the president can't change them or can't change them in 4 years.
Right.
But understand the foreign policy of the United States is entirely or like mostly under the control of the president, and I wish there was a way that people in the world could vote for that part of the foreign policies of the United States. I don't know. Well,
I mean, it would make sense. You'd never talk anybody into it, but there is an argument that could be made for that. There really is, because if the U.S. likes to pretend that it's, how can I put this? Like it's reactive to the world. Almost like, I mean, at least the way, if you just absorb media and don't think too deeply about it, and you hear the speeches and things, the sense is that we're just sitting here, being a country and doing what we do, and then people are doing stuff in all these other places that we have to react to. And so everything we do around the world is us reacting to stuff that other people are doing. And almost never does anyone come out and actually say, well, you know, what they're doing in these places is 9 times out of 10 a reaction to something that we have done while we were there or in our history. So we are actually going around meddling with all sorts of things. You don't hear that here in the country. What you hear is, well, gosh, somebody kidnapped somebody, or there was, someone blew up, or there's this instability and people are threatened, and so we have to do something about that. So it's a kind of a basic kind of propaganda that you would think wouldn't be that easy to perpetrate. I don't know what the right word is, and yet if you ask 9 out of 10 people in this country, why is the U.S. bombing this person or sending drones there or giving these sanctions? Why are we doing that? They can probably tell you what it is that we're reacting to, but they couldn't tell you what it is we did to help create that situation. They wouldn't even know. And that frightens me, because they're making decisions about who to support, whose policies to support, based only on the barest minimum of information that is incomplete. Yeah. Not that I'm expecting you to solve that problem, but it's just, it frustrates me because, yeah, you're right. People around the world ought to be able to have some say in what we do, since we're doing stuff to them all the time. We're constantly meddling.
Definitely you can't, solve this in just one shot or anything. But just the problem that exists, I hope that people, when they're voting here, they just also think about that aspect of the voting, the vote that the ballot that they're casting.
Yeah.
Just it exists, like whatever you decide to do here, and whoever becomes president, and what they decide to do about certain things, literally impact people's lives and basically their livelihood and what they're going to do, and etc. So.
Yeah, I think one could honestly say that more people are likely to die, literally be killed, based on who gets elected and what they decide to do in other countries than could possibly happen here in the U.S.
Yeah.
Like, literally, because this person is elected, all these people will die. Well, look at the Iraq War. Hundreds of thousands of people died for absolutely no good reason, simply because somebody here made decisions about what they wanted to do over there for whatever. We've got like 3 minutes. We can't relitigate the Iraq War, but it didn't have to happen. It wasn't caused by anything other than somebody's machinations, and many people died. Some people from here died because they were sent over there to fight, but they died because they were sent there to die, not because there was any reason for them to have to be there. So yeah, it must be very hard, as a citizen of the U.S. I can go, I don't understand that stuff. I'm just not gonna, literally, as you say, it's not really going to affect me personally.